Welcome to Be Your Greatest Asset podcast, especially for mums in business who want to feel inspired to prioritize your own well-being. And this podcast has been specifically designed, created lovingly for women in business to share their unique gifts and wisdom with each other. So I'm really happy to welcome Angie Jones-Moore today. Angie is a mindfulness practitioner and all sorts, and she will be happy to share that with you in a minute. But tonight we're going to be talking about the benefits of mindfulness, the different ways that we can apply it to daily life, which is so important. So welcome, Angie, and thank you so much for joining me. Would you like to
Hi.
introduce yourself?
Hi, thank you for having me.
Pleasure.
I'm Angie, life coach and therapist from We Need Life Coaching.
And you are a mum of teens, I believe.
I am, yes. They've both just had birthdays literally last week. So I've got a 19 and a 16-year-old now, which makes me feel
Fantastic.
ancient.
It's been quite an adventure, I'm sure.
It
There's a lot of.
has, yeah. Their birthdays are a day apart.
Oh wow, you timed that
I know,
well
it's
or
really
unwell, I don't
busy.
know.
Kind of, when they were little, it was great, but now they're older, they want everything separate, so it's not,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So the next challenge.
Yeah.
Next challenge of motherhood. So thank you for joining us, as I said. Would you like to share a little bit about your work that you offer? What
I work
therapies you
with
do?
well, I do lots of different therapies. I spent the last 7, 8 years studying and getting myself qualified. I was originally, well, I still am a Reiki master, which then led me to doing the life coaching, which the life coaching then led me to do the different therapies to be able to support individuals fully, because I coach for life as a whole. And I work over the telephone, so there's no restriction on where my clients are.
Yeah.
But oh, there's a long list. Mindfulness is my favorite. I'm a mindfulness practitioner, CBT therapist, professional relaxation therapist. I've recently done emotional freedom technique. I haven't used that very much as yet. But I also deal with people with their nutrition and their sleep patterns and all sorts of different things, so that you cover every aspect of life, so that you make sure, because there's no point dealing with one area if the rest is out of balance. So, and that's also obviously where mindfulness is super important.
Absolutely. So you mentioned that mindfulness is your favorite. So why
It
why is it
absolutely
your
is.
favorite?
I find mindfulness to be that I practice what I preach. So if I am offering the techniques to my clients, I've tried them myself. And some things I find are either too long-winded or maybe too complicated. And if somebody's in a position where they're trying to better themselves, you need things to be achievable. And I want to set people up to succeed. So mindfulness is just mindfulness is being in the present moment without judgment. And it's very simple to say, but it is actually quite difficult to incorporate that in your life to begin with, because you're obviously changing the way you see things, your different perspectives. But once you do, mindfulness is just the best thing, because you're practicing gratitude on a daily basis, being in the moment, and then it helps to just change your overall perspective on life.
Yeah. So how do you find that you help your clients to make it sustainable, to integrate it into their lives? What do you recommend?
I recommend starting off by doing a very short, there's a 60 second mindfulness meditation, which might sound, what 60 seconds going to do. But if you've only ever done a 60-second plank, you know how long 60 seconds can be.
It
So,
hurts. Haven't been practicing.
exactly.
Yeah.
You feel it, that's for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
So, but I often recommend starting with really short meditations, mindfulness breathing, alongside another established habit. So we walk and talk without thought. We breathe without thought. And when we start to use our breath differently, we can start to affect the way that affects our brain, our bodies, and so on and so forth. So I quite often recommend, try it when you're cleaning your teeth, because you tend to clean your teeth for 60 seconds. So if you can incorporate it then, and then once you're confident you're doing that without thinking, you can then start to do it independently. And then the more you do it, the more beneficial it is if you are in a state of, say something happens at work and you feel particularly stressed, you can apply it there and then. Nobody knows you're doing it. You're doing it to yourself and you're getting the benefits. The other one's when you put the kettle on. And if you work in an office and you go to make drinks, I think a kettle takes about 60 seconds, if not longer, doesn't it? If you're waiting for it to boil,
Yeah.
that's quite a good time to do it if you're in a work environment.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. And that's the thing that I love about mindfulness, because I also teach mindfulness, and the fact that you can do it on the go.
Yeah.
Um, you don't have to take any special time for it, whatever. But would you be able to share the difference between meditation and mindfulness with our
I
audience?
think for me personally, I think when people think of meditation, they imagine joss sticks and sitting on a yoga mat and legs crossed and having to be in a designated zone.
Yeah,
Or and that's something that when I have new clients, they all think, I haven't got time for this, I haven't got time for this. But we're not taking any time, we're utilizing the time we've already got. And with mindfulness, you incorporate it into your daily practices, and the more you do, if you regularly, well, you should regularly walk anyway, we all know this, don't we?
yeah,
But 10 minutes of mindful walking within your, say, walk to the shop, or walking to get your children from school, or even, if you drive your car but you're early to pick them up from school, you can still have a walk around the area before you pick them up. And mindful walking is another fantastic one that you can just incorporate into. And I think that is the main difference, I think, between meditation and mindfulness, is that it is something you incorporate into movement as well, really, isn't it? It's
yeah.
not something you need to sit in a meditative, can't even say it, meditative state.
It's like a takeaway, isn't it? A takeaway meditation.
Yeah,
Almost.
it is. Do it on the
It's
go.
yeah. I mean, hoovering is a prime example for me personally of being mindful. I actually quite enjoy hoovering because I think it's the white noise. I get into the zone, and I'm thinking about those getting into those corners, and
Yeah.
although it sounds really boring, but that is the thing. Like, I find that being a mum and being a business owner, even just life in general, there's always something mundane that crops up during the day that you have to do, um, for survival or hygiene or whatever. And it's trying to, almost, if you get into a mindful state, it actually makes it a bit more enjoyable, I find. How about
It
you?
is, it's a perpetual cycle, isn't it? Everybody, children, adults, we all have things we have to do. We've all got to clean the kitchen. We've all got to do the dishes. We've all got to peg the washing out or put the washing in, so on and so forth. And
Yeah,
I think it's the Pareto theory that I quite often quote. It's the 80-20. So you get 80% productivity from 20% focused activity. And again, that's like a mindful approach, because when you're focused, you're in the moment and you're being mindful of what you're doing. Therefore, you are lowering your cortisol, your adrenaline, and you're focused on your activity. So you do tend to get more benefit from the mundane, I think. Like you were saying with the hoovering, everybody's got to hoover, haven't they? Well,
yeah,
they maybe don't have to, but most people choose to, don't they?
yes,
Or sweep, whatever your chosen surface is.
yeah. Yeah, it's absolutely true. Yeah. So, going back to the mindful walking, how do you mindful walk? What do you do in a
Well,
mindful walk?
I have two different ways of doing it, and it very much depends on the individual as to which way I suggest. So some people hate to focus on themselves. They really can't focus on themselves. They don't like thinking about themselves. In which case, in that circumstance, I would give them mindful walking to focus on your surroundings as you walk. So, what can you see? Are there any birds in the hedge? Have you noticed any flowers? Especially if it's a regular route that you do, because we all tend to have certain places we walk. What do you notice? Because we do all drift along and not pay attention to the present moment.
Yeah.
So, what can you hear? Can you hear anything different? What does the day feel like on your face? Is it breezy? Is it warm? And by drawing your attention really to nature and your surroundings, you're again being mindful in that moment for what's happening in the here and now. And the other alternative way that I do suggest to some people is to focus on yourself. So, what are the footfall of your feet doing? again, what can you feel on your fingertips? Where's your breath in your body as you're walking? You know, can you feel any particular joints? Can you feel your, you know, is your hip giving you jip, kind of thing, and so on and so forth. So there's two different ways I like to do it, and I always tell my clients both and let them choose. And I do 9 times out of 10 they choose the one where you're focused on nature and your surroundings. Because even if you're in the middle of a city, you don't tend to pay attention to what's actually going on around you, because
That's so
we just
true.
don't, do we?
We don't. We're so blinkered, aren't we, in our own little worlds? And then, we then technology comes in and we're distracted by the phones and things as we're walking along, for example. But I love my walk home from school. I've actually really missed that over the school holidays.
Yeah,
Nice sort of 20-minute, half an hour walk home. That is my time that I protect. Like we will always walk to school, rain or shine, unless it's a rare occasion when we actually get in the car and
yeah,
drive. Um, and it's mostly because I love that time to myself. It's like my buffer zone where
yeah.
it's I feel free, and
It's
it
like
sets me up for the day. Then my
it's
working
almost
day.
like a time to deflate as well, you know,
Mm,
in some ways, because you do have that, because I walk my two dogs a lot. Obviously my children they've literally finished school this summer, so we've got college coming around again. But the I make sure I walk my dogs every day, because again, like you've just said, that is my time to
mm,
go and just, you know, let your own brain come down a peg or two, isn't it? So that you
yeah.
can feel like you're, and even if I'm absolutely exhausted, I will make myself go, because we all get exhausted as mums, don't we? Because there is a perpetual cycle of being a mum. It's always, you know,
Yeah,
especially in the summer holidays, it can be really difficult, can't it?
it's quite a juggling act, isn't it, on a school day? But there's pros and cons, and that's the thing with life. Pros and cons to everything. So on a school day, it gives me a focused time that I have to have my self-care done by, and I get that walk and I get that dedicated time to work. But then the downside is that I am tied to specific times. I'm not
Yeah.
in so much of a flow, whereas in school holidays, I told you earlier, I was working from bed yesterday morning until about, I don't know, nearly 11 o'clock actually. But it was just a day where I've been rushing around so much the last few weeks that I decided to take a mindful approach and just, enjoy my immediate surroundings and
Yeah,
get nice and
exactly.
present. And but then again, so it's a slower pace in the mornings potentially. I don't have to rush out the door. Um, but then other things potentially go because I'm trying to cram the work in first thing in the morning. So maybe my self-care routine, my yoga, my breath work practice maybe slips a little bit. But yeah, it was a bit of an aside there. But let's
No,
bring us back to your mindfulness. So tell us what the benefits of mindfulness are, please.
I just think they're endless, you know. I am a massive fan of mindfulness, but I think when people have never done it before, I think initially they think that's not doing anything, that's not doing anything. But it is the repetition, and it's the continued practice, and it is the practice of gratitude, which is part of mindfulness, because it's keeping you in the present moment, and it's learning how to be in the present moment. And when you can actually be in the here and now without thinking about what's happening tomorrow, or, you know, especially as mums, I think, you know, when your children are really small, when, you know, they want you to play with them, you can guarantee your head is thinking about, I've got to go and get that washing out, and I need to, what am I going to feed them for tea, and oh, and so and so's coming round, and I need to pay the electric bill, and all these things. Like, the mental load of a mum is immense, isn't it? Because it never ends. I mean, I think we worked out I did 16 years of school runs, which have obviously just come to an end. And when you count it up, you think, that's a like huge amount of your time. But it's,
Incredible.
yeah, but mindfulness for me, I mean, the benefits, it lowers your cortisol, it lowers your adrenaline. So for people with anxiety problems and feeling stressed, etc., it is fantastic. And because the mindful meditations are so short, you know, I think the maximum I give out is 20 minutes. You can do them without restriction, which is again what we've just said previously. You know, it's fantastic that you can do them in any surrounding, because it's about your focus, where you are and what you're feeling and thinking. So I just think the benefits are endless. I really do. I think it's one of the best practices to have within the holistic offering, you might say.
Yeah. It's incredible. I'm a huge fan of mindfulness. It's completely changed my life. I used to be that mum who I'd be at the park, for example, and I'd be thinking about where I need to go next. And I used to cram in so much every day. I'd go to see a friend, and then because we were in the neighborhood, I'd pop into a particular shop on the way back, and then I don't know, go somewhere else. So when that was with my first son, but because my boys are 11 and 7 now, um,
Yeah.
and when I had my second son, I just said no. I said I'm going to only make one plan a day, maximum one plan a day, and also have days where I'm not planning everything, just to take that mental strain off and to be more present. And something that my mum said to me, um, when I first became a mum, was she wishes that she hadn't always said to me and my sister, in a minute or later, or she wishes that
Mm.
she'd, like, that's one of her regrets, she told me. And that really struck a chord with me, like really resonated with me, to the point that I was like, I don't want to be that mum either. I don't want to have regrets like that. I want to enjoy them. And I think even second time round, I've been a lot more mindful of my time, of my energy, um, knowing how quickly the first one grew up. And yeah, they
I
do
think
grow up so
I,
fast, but
they really do. And in all honesty, I was a single mum with a newborn and a 3-year-old. So I've had sort of very not what you expected parenting experiences. You know, it's not what I planned for, but you can't control what everybody does, can you? So these things happen. But when I was sort of single with a newborn baby and a 3-year-old, and I was thinking, oh my goodness, you know, but I enjoyed it. I really did enjoy being a single mum because I had these two wonderful people to myself, but also it was exhausting. And you know, you're trying to fit everything in, and I think that society puts a pressure on you to produce these children that can do 3 types of martial arts and swim for the Olympics and also play football, but they've also got to ride a unicycle by the time they're 4. You know, there's all these different things, and I let my children try everything along the way. You know, if they wanted to try street dance, we did, and then we tried this. And but the one thing we always stuck with was swimming. That was the consistent, because I think it's a life skill. You know, I think it's important children can swim because, and now, you know, they're obviously both pretty much adults. They, you know, they're off in the sea and they're doing whatever they're doing, and you're confident that they are as safe as they can be, you know,
yeah,
because
yeah.
they've got that strength. But I think as a mum, like you say, it's, you have to sort of set yourself some boundaries, especially with your first child. You do get wrapped up in the, I need to do all of this in one day, and I need to do this and produce all these wonderful things, you know. And it's the whole homemade thing as well, isn't it? You know, you're trying to homemade food and give them the best nutrition and do everything from scratch, and sometimes you're just too exhausted. You know, it doesn't actually hurt to give them a pizza once in a blue moon, you know, or it doesn't hurt to relent to the McDonald's requests.
Exactly. Well, I confess we had Marmite on toast for dinner tonight because we had
Oh,
a
nice.
bigger lunch. My son actually cooked lunch, this scrambled eggs for lunch today, and made
Oh,
made some.
wow.
Oh, he's 11, and he, yeah, it was incredible. So we were quite full up actually from this, like this concoction that he made with scrambled eggs and cheese and vegetables and things. And it's like, oh,
Yeah,
so yeah, we just like, oh, just have Marmite on toast. That was our dinner tonight. You don't have to. We can take the pressure off ourselves sometimes. Definitely.
I do remember when I was on my own, and my son, he wasn't sleeping in. He was at that stage where, you know, when they sort of go from napping to not needing quite so much napping, and you can end up not quite knowing where the nap needs to be. And I remember ringing my friend saying, "Oh, I can't get dinner made," and you know, floods of tears. And she said to me, "Give them chicken nuggets. It's not going to kill them." And I was like, I'd never thought of feeding them out of the freezer before. So I had to specifically go and buy like frozen food to feed, you know, my then toddler and her friend, because I was so desperately trying to be this, you know,
Yeah.
stereotypical does everything right mum, which I don't think any of us are, because we all just try our best. It's the long
No,
and short of it, isn't it? But I
that's
wish I'd known about mindfulness then. I wish I had. I mean, that was obviously a long time ago, but I wish I'd known about mindfulness when my two were small, because it would have altered the perspective, definitely.
Definitely, yeah. When mine were little, I was trained in Reiki as well, actually. Not only level one, so not professionally, but it always came through in my massage therapy. So I was massaging. I taught baby massage as well. So that was great from when my my boys were born. But and then the mindfulness came later, for me. Oh, I'd always loved meditation and yoga and the yoga nidra and all of that. But yeah, I do wish that I'd started practicing the mindfulness a lot earlier, because I feel like I would have settled into motherhood faster, and
Yes.
like got over
Yeah.
my loss of independence that I really struggled with, and everything, and just really loved myself and accepted myself earlier, for who I was now as a mother, and like,
Yeah.
give myself a break, and okay, well, I'm doing the best I can, and I'm being more present and enjoying it more, and not feeling so flustered all the time. And yeah,
I think especially with your first, it is true what they say, they are your learning curve, because your whole world changes with your first child, don't they?
yeah,
And I do think that even though I was on my own when my second came along, I enjoyed it so much more because I knew what I was doing from first time round. So then I started to really get into the flow.
yeah,
Whereas I think with your first, you're just so desperately trying to do everything right all the time, aren't you? And you're tired.
yeah, absolutely,
There's no
yeah.
escaping the tired.
Even but even now it's still tiring for different reasons though, but
Oh
yeah.
yeah.
So we've talked about sort of having younger children, and I brought that in specifically because it's actually quite relevant for me. We've actually talked about the newborn stage as well, and having really early children. But how have you used mindfulness? How have you used it to benefit you as a mother and a business owner as your children have grown to their ripe old ages
Well,
of being.
yeah, well, I mean, obviously one's an official adult, but I do give them mindfulness things to do. And I think the way I parent's different because I'm different, because I'm more in the moment. And I think you do have to you've got to let them find their way. And I think had I not discovered mindfulness, I might have been a bit more, you need to go to college and do this, or you need to go and do that. This is what you should be doing, and more kind of like trying to influence their decisions and things like that. But having had that in my life when I was younger, because I think it's a generational thing, isn't it? Your parents kind of guide, not so much guided, but kind of said, you need to go and do, I mean, I'm a qualified accountant because it was, you need to, you're clever, you need to go and do this. So that's what I did before I had Casey, basically. But it's I never went back to it, oddly. But I think with them being older, you can, I'm more present, therefore you encourage them to be more present, and you encourage them to think more openly and with a different perspective. So I try and encourage them to make their own choices. Yes, they're going to make mistakes along the way, but we have to make mistakes to learn, as long as they're not detrimental. Obviously, you're not going to let your child do that. But I do think with older children, the way they learn how to navigate the world is by using their own instincts. So I do encourage them to not suppress those, which again, the social media, the phones, the everything else, that's all no good for your instincts, is it? Because you're constantly being brainwashed into this is how you should be doing things.
Desensitizing you, isn't it? That's
It is. And I think especially with the
irritating.
teens, the constant scrolling on TikTok and things like that, it's just constantly overstimulating the brain. So how can you listen to your own instincts if they're being squashed all the time
Yeah, yeah,
by different opinions and voices and opinions?
yeah, absolutely. And do you feel that your mindfulness practice then has improved your relationship between yourself and your children?
I think so. Yeah, we do all get along really well. We don't have any of the we've had odd things because nobody's perfect, but we've never had any of the teen stomping and doors banging and the things that you would again stereotypically hear people say, or constant arguing and things like that. We've never experienced anything like that yet, she says, just touching some wood.
Good. But then I'm sure that because of your mindset, and your energy, your energetics, if that did occur, you would potentially handle it in a very different way.
Absolutely, because I think pre-mindfulness, I would have been a lot more reactive.
Mm.
But obviously, I'm aware of my reactions. I'm aware of what I can and can't control, because obviously we can't control anybody other than ourselves. We can't, we can suggest and we can try to influence, but ultimately we can't control what anybody else does. And I think I am a lot more aware. I use a technique called the pause a lot, which is a little mindfulness one. And it's literally just a heartbeat, just a split second before you speak or before you act. And again, that can be a really good technique when clients, if they're quick to anger or quick to respond. And again, we live in a world where people expect an immediate response, but we don't have to actually comply. We don't have to give an immediate response. So if we do have a circumstance where maybe there's upset or heartbreak and tears and things like that, let it run its course. Pick your moment. I always think, I'll just wait. And if I can feel myself, I don't know, feeling like I might react, I'll just step away, deal with myself, and then come back and speak when I feel like I'm going to speak sensibly, because it serves no purpose. It serves no purpose to anybody. If somebody's already upset, if you then start shouting and screaming back at them, I don't see the point in that at all. Although it sounds like a perfect world, obviously it isn't. But I think as an adult, it's my responsibility to remove myself from a position if I feel reactive, to lower that down, again using the mindfulness techniques.
Yeah, no, it does sound like an ideal world, but you and I both know that it is a very, it can be reality. That's the thing,
It
like
really
that we
can,
get
and
that
it's
choice, and that's the beauty of mindfulness, is it is how you respond, isn't it? And it's
yeah,
when you're having an argument with somebody, it's um it just escalates and escalates and escalates, doesn't it? It's been a long time since I've had an argument with somebody because
me
I've
too,
taken
to be
this.
fair.
Yeah, we don't
Yeah,
argue. Like we might say some strong words like firm, but that's more boundary setting. Like for example, this morning the boys came into my bedroom and they were arguing, and I said, "This is my space. Like you're so welcome here, but not with these arguments. You like if you
no,
want to argue, you have to leave. But I work hard to protect my space and my energy, and you
yeah,
need to take that outside, sort it out, or we reset." And they chose to
yeah,
reset, and everything was fine. And then when they did go away, and when I was ready to leave my room, so just getting dressed, um, getting ready for the day, um, I just checked in with them and just said, "Is everything all right? How you feeling now? Is anything you want to talk about?" They were fine. They were getting on fine. They were playing friends together. It was all good. So
yeah.
you can avoid a whole load of
I
heartache
just don't
and
think it serves a purpose. And I
no.
quite often say to people, we want to respond, not react. And
Mm.
I think reactions are emotionally fused, aren't they? They come from anger or upset. So it's an immediate firing out of words that ultimately, when you react to something, maybe somebody said or a behavior they've done, it's not a thought out process, and it doesn't mean you have to think for 5 hours before you respond. But if you were to use something like the pause, where you literally take a very gentle sigh before you respond,
Mm.
you are more likely to have ordered your brain and your thoughts a little bit, so what you say is more constructive, in which case you then prevent the guilt and the aftermath and so on and so forth from an emotional reaction.
Yeah.
But I mean, nobody's perfect, obviously.
No,
Nobody can keep
no, of course
everything in
not.
all of the time. But
Yeah.
if the majority of the time you are responding and not reacting, I think you're doing a pretty good job, to be honest.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. So yeah, there's a technique that I love to use called the stop technique. Do you know that one? The
Yes, they do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you actually just stop what you're doing, like you paused the TV kind of thing. You
Yeah.
pause your life, and then just take a few moments, take a few breaths, and then become aware of what's actually like observe what's going on in your body, like how are you feeling, where do you feel tension, where do you feel pinchy or whatever, and then decide how you want to proceed. So it's just, yeah, just another really good way to consciously, mindfully take that pause, like you've said. So it's really amazing.
It is. It's just bringing yourself into the moment. And I think I don't think realistically you can be in the moment 24/7. I don't think,
No.
when you, especially when you have children and, if you're here, there, and everywhere, especially when they're smaller and you are going to different clubs or you're coming from school and you're managing to feed them in between and one thing and another. But I think if you do feel yourself, either having feelings of exhaustion or you're just not feeling quite right or you just feel a bit down, or flustered, if you do, like you say, the stop or the pause, it just gives you that moment to kind of think, right, where are we, what's actually happening and what actually matters right now. I think
Yeah,
that's the other thing, to get the perspective, isn't it?
definitely. Yeah, definitely. That's amazing. Wow. We're gonna come to a close in a moment, but I would love to ask you your sort of top tips, but you've already shared so many, which are probably the nuggets, but which has been incredible. And I'm sure they'll be mighty, mighty useful for everyone who's listening. But your final thoughts, your final words of wisdom regarding mindfulness and the benefits of mindfulness, what would you say to somebody who was unsure about it, about starting it, about what it even is? Whatever comes out, what flows out of your mouth?
I always think, I mean, it's like we said earlier, isn't it? Mindfulness is being in the present moment without judgment. That is it in a nutshell. And it does sound really simplistic, but it can be quite difficult to apply to begin with. And I think the key thing with mindfulness is not to shy away from it. Just begin. If you don't have a coach or a therapist who can guide you, have a look on the internet, find a book, just begin and have a read or start to investigate, because the more you investigate and the more you realize, actually, I can put this in my day-to-day life, when you're cleaning your teeth and so on and so forth, then you will start to feel the benefits. And it does take time to alter perspectives. You can't change it overnight. So you need to give yourself that time as well, I think, is the key message. You need to allow yourself time to adjust to new ways of doing things.
Yeah. Yeah, that's lovely. Really, really valuable advice. Thank you so much for bringing that to us. And one final thing before we say thank you and cheerio. Would you like to share a little bit about how people can work with you, how people can contact you, how our listeners can reach you?
So I don't have a website anymore. I'm mainly on Facebook and Instagram. It's More Unique Life Coaching, so you're always welcome to contact me that way. I work with people over the telephone, and I always recommend a minimum of 4-hour-long sessions, and we cover the whole of your life. So we always address every area of life during our sessions, because if one area is out of balance, you can't expect the rest to, we can't just fix one part and expect the rest to fall into place, because life just doesn't work like that. So yeah, it'd be lovely to hear from anybody. And I'm always happy to guide people, if you're in a particular fix. I never mind sending an email or a message to get people started in the right direction sometimes, because that's all some people need, isn't it? It's just a bit of help to get on the right path.
Definitely. Oh, that's really kind. Yeah, thank you. Thanks so much. So I'll put your contact details in the show notes, so people know where to get hold of you. So thank you so much for joining us today,
Thank you for
Angie.
having me. It's been lovely to speak to you.
It's been lovely to speak to you about something that I'm really, really passionate about, something that literally has transformed my own life and my children's lives as well, and my husband's too. So
Yeah, valid
I just think
point.
that ripple effect, isn't it? It's just magnificent. It's so empowering to know that you have the tools that can literally make other people feel incredible and show
Absolutely.
them a new way. Show them a new way. So it's amazing. Thank you so much, Andy. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.